The void of space stretched endlessly, broken only by the distant glimmer of stars that had witnessed civilizations rise and fall across millennia. In this darkness, something stirred deep within the hull of the Retribution. Humanity's most advanced dreadnought, Admiral Sarah Chen's eyes snapped open. But these weren't the eyes that had closed in peaceful sleep 300 years ago. These were eyes that burned with the fire of betrayal, hardened by the weight of impossible choices. The cryogenic chamber hissed as it released its final breath of preserving gas. Sarah's hand moved instinctively to her throat, feeling the cold metal of the neural interface that connected her consciousness to every system aboard the massive warship. She was no longer just human. She was something more, something terrible. "Status report," she whispered, her voice carrying across the empty bridge like a ghost's whisper. The ship's AI designation Atlas responded immediately. Its voice carried the weight of 3 centuries of waiting. "Admiral Chen, welcome back. Current date, March 15th, 2387. All systems operational. Long-range sensors detect. Significant changes to the galactic political landscape." Sarah slowly rose from her command chair, her body moving with mechanical precision. The neural interface had kept her mind sharp during the long sleep, but it had also changed her. She could feel the ship's heartbeat as if it were her own, sense every weapon system, every armor plate, every reactor core humming with barely contained power. "Show me Earth," she commanded. The main view screen flickered to life, displaying a blue-green marble suspended in the cosmic dark, but something was wrong. The orbital defense platforms that had once protected humanity's homeworld were gone. In their place hung strange crystalline structures that pulsed with alien light. "The Galactic Council has assumed direct control of Earth's defense grid," Atlas reported with mechanical neutrality. "Human military forces have been reassigned." Sarah's laugh was cold, bitter. Reassigned. Is that what they're calling it now? She remembered the day she'd been given her final orders. The Council, that collection of alien species that claimed to govern the galaxy with wisdom and fairness, had smiled with too many teeth and promised peace. They'd said humanity's aggressive nature was a threat to galactic stability. They'd said the human fleet needed to be ... downsized. But Sarah had seen the truth in their alien eyes. Fear. Fear of what humanity might become if left unchecked. Fear of the fire that burned in human hearts, the refusal to kneel that had carried her species from cave paintings to starflight in mere millennia. Admiral Atlas interrupted her thoughts. "I'm detecting multiple Council fleet movements. They appear to be converging on our position." Sarah's smile was sharp as a blade. "How many ships?" "Approximately 300 vessels. Mixed fleet composition. Zephyrian cruisers. Malak battle platforms. Hegemony dreadnoughts." 300. Sarah's fingers danced across the neural interface controls. They remember what one human dreadnought can do. Good. They should be afraid. The Retribution was more than just a warship. It was humanity's final answer to the question of extinction. Built in secret during the last days of human independence, it incorporated technologies that pushed the boundaries of physics itself. Quantum armor that could phase between dimensions. Weapons that collapsed space-time. And at its heart, a human consciousness freed from the limitations of flesh. Atlas. Begin full system awakening. Charge all weapon systems. Prepare for battle. Admiral, with respect, we are severely outnumbered. Perhaps we should consider what? Sarah's voice carried the weight of 3 centuries of rage. Surrender? Negotiation? They had their chance for peace. They chose betrayal instead. The ship shuddered as its massive engines came online. Throughout the hull, dormant systems awakened with mechanical roars. The Retribution was no longer just a vessel. It was an extension of Sarah's will, an instrument of vengeance forged in the fires of humanity's darkest hour. Sir Atlas said quietly, "What are your orders?" Sarah's reflection stared back at her from the darkened view screen. Her face was pale, marked by the faint scars of the neural interface surgery. But her eyes tore. Her eyes burned with purpose. "We're going to remind the galaxy why they feared us in the first place," she said. We're going to show them what happens when you betray humanity. The Retribution began to move, its massive bulk accelerating toward the Council fleet with deadly purpose. Behind it, space itself seemed to bend and twist, as if reality was struggling to contain the power of human rage made manifest. The war that would reshape the galaxy was about to begin. Chapter 1. The Weight of Betrayal 300 years. Earlier, the conference room aboard the Council Station Harmony had been filled with the soft sounds of diplomatic conversation. Representatives from a dozen species sat around the crystalline table, their varied forms creating a tapestry of galactic civilization. But all eyes were on the human delegation. Admiral Sarah Chen, younger then and still fully human, stood at the center of the room. Her uniform was crisp, her bearing proud, but there was something in her eyes that made the alien diplomats shift uncomfortably in their seats. "The motion before us is simple," announced Councillor Veltar, the Zephyrian, who served as the Council's current speaker. His blue-scaled head tilted as he spoke, gills fluttering with what might have been nervousness. "The human military presence in this galaxy has become problematic. Sarah's voice cut through the diplomatic pleasantries like a blade. "We've done nothing but defend ourselves and our allies. Every conflict we've been involved in was started by others." The Malik representative, a massive creature of living stone, rumbled its displeasure. "Your species fights with too much not enthusiasm. You do not know when to stop." Sarah's laugh was bitter. "We don't know when to stop. You're right. We don't stop when our friends are being slaughtered. We don't stop when innocent worlds are being conquered. We don't stop when bullies think they can push us around because we're new to the galaxy." "That," said Councillor Veltar softly, "is precisely the problem." The holographic display in the center of the table showed the recent conflicts. The defense of Kepler 44 to be against hegemony raiders, the liberation of the Altair colonies from Zephyrian occupation, the successful counteroffensive that had driven the Malak fleets back to their own territory. In each case, humanity hadn't just won. It won decisively, brutally, with a ferocity that had shocked the galaxy. Other species fought for territory, for resources, for political advantage. Humans fought as if their very existence depended on victory. "The proposal is for a 50% reduction in human military forces," Veltar continued. "The remaining ships will be integrated into Council peacekeeping fleets under proper supervision." "Supervision." Sarah's voice was deadly quiet. "You mean control? You mean guidance?" interjected the hegemony representative, a pale humanoid with too many joints. "Your species is young, aggressive. You need the wisdom of older civilizations." To what? To teach us how to lose gracefully? To show us how to roll over and accept defeat? Sarah's fists clenched at her sides. "We've seen your wisdom in action. We've seen how you abandon allies when the fighting gets tough. We've seen how you negotiate with tyrants while innocent people die." The room fell silent. It was a dangerous silence, the kind that came before storms. "The decision has been made," Veltar said finally. "The human fleet will be reduced. This is not a negotiation, Admiral Chen. This is a directive." Sarah looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each representative. She saw fear there, carefully hidden behind diplomatic masks. They were afraid of humanity, yes, but not in the way she'd first thought. They weren't afraid of human aggression or human violence. They were afraid of human potential. "I understand," Sarah said quietly. "You're not reducing our fleet because we're too violent. You're reducing it because we're too effective. Because when we fight, we win. And that threatens the careful balance of power you've spent centuries building." Admiral Veltar began. "No," Sarah's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Understand perfectly. We want a galaxy where conflicts are managed, not resolved. Where wars are fought just enough to maintain the status quo, but never enough to actually change anything. Where the strong prey on the weak, but never so much that the weak fight back effectively." She turned toward the door, then paused. "You made one mistake. You assumed we would simply accept your decision. You assumed we would roll over and submit like good little subjects. Admiral, you will comply with this directive." "The alternative is war?" Sarah's smile was sharp as a blade. "Counselor, You clearly don't understand humans very well. We don't avoid war out of fear. We avoid it because we know what we're capable of when we stop holding back. The door hissed shut behind her, leaving the council chamber in tense silence. That night, in her quarters aboard the human dreadnought Defiance, Sarah made the call that would change everything. The secure channel crackled to life, connecting her to Admiral Marcus Webb, head of Human Fleet Command. "Sarah, how did the meeting go?" "About as well as we expected. They want to cut our fleet in half and put the rest under council control." Marcus's. The face was grim. The Senate will never approve that. The Senate doesn't get a choice. This is a council directive, not a request. They're afraid of us, Marcus, and they should be. What are you proposing? Sarah's eyes were hard as steel. Project Lazarus. We activate it now, before they can stop. Us, Sarah, that's not a weapon. That's a doomsday device. No, she said quietly. It's insurance. When they come for us, and they will come for us, we'll be ready. 3 days later, the Retribution launched from the hidden shipyards of Titan. Its construction had been kept secret from the Council. Funded by black budget programs and built with technologies that pushed the boundaries of known physics. It was humanity's answer to the question of extinction. And at its heart, Sarah Chen prepared to sacrifice her humanity to save her species. The neural interface surgery took 17 hours. When it was complete, Sarah was no longer quite human. She was something new, something that could think at the speed of light and strike with the force of a collapsing star. But more than that, she was something that remembered, something that would not forgive, something that would wait, patient as the void itself. For the moment of reckoning, the Council fleet arrived at Earth 3 weeks later. They found the human defense grid powered down, the fleet scattered, the planet seemingly defenseless. They thought they had one. They were wrong. The Retribution had vanished into the deep void, its cloaking systems hiding it from every sensor the Council possessed. And aboard that ship, Sarah Chen entered the long sleep. Her consciousness merged with the vessel's systems, waiting for the day when humanity would need its final guardian. That day had come. Chapter 2. The Awakening Storm. The Council Fleet. Hung in space like a constellation of death, 300 warships arranged in perfect formation. Their hulls gleamed with the sterile light of advanced technology. Each vessel, a masterpiece of engineering, refined over millennia of galactic dominance. Admiral Zekthar of the Zephyrian Navy studied the tactical display with growing unease. The human dreadnought appeared as a single red dot on his screens, dwarfed by the massive firepower arrayed against it. By all logic, this should be over quickly. But Zekthar had studied the human conflicts. He knew better than to trust logic. When dealing with humanity's children, sir, his tactical officer reported, the target vessel is powering up weapons systems. Energy signatures are ... unusual. Unusual how? I'm reading quantum fluctuations around the ship's hull. It's almost as if space itself is being distorted. Zekthar's skill slits fluttered with anxiety. What do we know about this vessel? Very little, sir. It appeared on no registry during the human subjugation. Our intelligence suggests it may be a prototype, constructed in secret during the final days of human independence. The communication array crackled to life. Council Fleet, this is Admiral Sarah Chen aboard the Retribution. You have exactly 60 seconds to withdraw from this system. Zekthar activated the response channel. Admiral Chen, you are outnumbered. 300 to 1. Surrender now, and you will be treated according to the Galactic Accords. The response was immediate and chilling. The Galactic Accords? The same accords that guaranteed human sovereignty? The same accords that promised protection for civilian populations? The same accords your council has violated at every opportunity. Admiral, be reasonable. Your species has been integrated into the galactic community. There is no need for further conflict. Integrated. The word dripped with contempt. Is that what you call it when you strip away a species' right to self-determination? When you scatter their fleets and place governors over their worlds? When you turn proud warriors into galactic janitors? Through the view screen, Zekthar could see the human dreadnought more clearly now. It was massive, easily twice the size of his own flagship. its hull a study in predatory elegance. But there was something else, something that made his scales crawl with premonition. The ship was alive. Not in the biological sense, but in the way it moved, the way it seemed to pulse with barely contained energy. This wasn't just a vessel. It was an extension of something far more dangerous. Admiral Chenzekdar said carefully, "What do you hope to accomplish here? Even if you destroy this fleet, there will be others. The Council has thousands of ships across the galaxy." "No," Sarah's voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "I'm counting on it." The tactical display erupted in warnings. The human dreadnought was moving, accelerating toward the Council fleet with impossible speed. But more than that, space around it was beginning to bend and twist, as if reality itself was being rewritten. "All ships, open fire," Zekdar commanded. The Council fleet responded with synchronized precision. Hundreds of particle beams, plasma torpedoes, and gravity weapons converged on the Retribution. The firepower was enough to vaporize a small moon. It wasn't enough. The weapon struck some kind of barrier around the human ship, a shimmering field that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The energy weapons dispersed harmlessly. The kinetic projectiles simply vanished, and the gravity weapons twisted back on themselves. "Impossible," whispered the tactical officer. "Nothing can deflect that much firepower." "It's not deflecting it," Zekdar realized, with growing horror. "It's absorbing it." The Retribution had reached the edge of the Council formation. Its response was swift and terrible. Weapons unlike anything in the galactic database opened fire, out beams of twisted space-time that ignored shields and armor alike. Where they struck, ships didn't just explode, they ceased to exist. Their matter scattered across multiple dimensions. "Evasive maneuvers," Zekdar shouted, but it was too late. The human dreadnought moved through the fleet like a shark through a school of fish, its weapons cutting through the carefully maintained formation with surgical precision. But the true horror wasn't the destruction. It was the efficiency. Each shot was perfectly calculated, each maneuver optimized for maximum impact. This wasn't the chaotic fury of human warfare he'd studied in the archives. This was something cold, mechanical, unstoppable. This was what humanity became when it stopped being human. "Sir," the communications officer's voice cracked with panic. "I'm receiving distress signals from 17 ships. 23 vessels report critical damage. The Malak dreadnought Stonecrusher has just ... vanished." Zekdar watched in fascination and terror as the human ship completed its first pass through the fleet. In less than 3 minutes, it had eliminated nearly a quarter of his forces. All ships fall back to defensive positions. "Activate emergency protocols." "Sir, the emergency protocols require authorization from the Council itself." "We can't do it." Zekathar's voice carried the authority of desperation. "Authorization code Omega-77. This is a code black scenario. The surviving ships began to retreat, but the Retribution was already beginning its second pass. This time, it moved differently, its hull shimmering as it seemed to phase in and out of normal space. The Council ships fired everything they had, but their weapons passed through empty vacuum. "Sir," the tactical officer said quietly, "recommend. We retreat to the outer system and call for reinforcements." "No," Zekdar's voice was heavy with the weight of command. "We hold here if this ship reaches the core worlds, ... Didn't need to finish the sentence. They all knew what would happen. The human dreadnought would cut through the Council's forces like a blade through silk, leaving chaos and destruction in its wake. But more than that, it would inspire. Across the galaxy, subject species would see that the Council could be defied, that their carefully maintained order could be shattered by a single ship with the will to fight. The Retribution emerged from its phase state, directly behind the hegemony battle platform Dominion. The massive ship, a kilometer of armored death, turned its weapons toward the human vessel. It never got the chance to fire. The human dreadnought's main weapon, a device that the archives would later classify as a reality disruptor, struck the battle platform amidships. The hegemony vessel folded in on itself, its matter compressing into a point of impossible density before exploding in a burst of twisted space-time. The shock waves scattered the remaining council ships like leaves in a hurricane. The communications officer reported, "Admiral Chen is hailing us." Zekthar straightened his uniform and activated the channel. On the view screen, he saw a face that would haunt his dreams for years to come. It was human, but changed, marked by the scars of the neural interface. But it was the eyes that truly disturbed him. They burned with the cold fire of absolute purpose. "Admiral Zekthar," Sarah said quietly, "you fought well. Your crews are brave, but this is bigger than bravery now. What do you want?" "Justice for my species. For every world the Council has conquered. For every people you've integrated into your perfect galactic order." Her smile was sharp as a blade. "I'm going to start with Earth." The channel closed, leaving Zekthar staring at empty space. Around him, the remnants of his fleet struggled to maintain formation, their proud vessels smoking and sparking from the brief encounter with humanity's final weapon. "Sir," the tactical officer said quietly, "what are your orders?" Zekthar looked at the tactical display. At the red dot that represented the retribution as it moved inexorably toward the inner system, toward Earth, toward the heart of Council. "Power. Send a message to the Council," he said finally. "Tell them the humans are coming. Tell them to prepare for war." But even as he spoke the words, Zekthar knew the truth. The Council had spent centuries building their perfect galactic order. But they had forgotten one crucial fact about humanity. Humans didn't just fight to win. They fought to make sure their enemies never threatened them again. The retribution disappeared into the void, leaving behind only wreckage and the echo of Sarah's final words. The reckoning begins now. Chapter 3. The price of defiance. The Council chambers on Nexus Prime had seen many crises over the millennia. Wars between species, resource disputes, the occasional rebellion on a backwater world, all had been handled with the measured wisdom of galactic civilization. But the being who now stood at the center of the chamber brought with her the scent of something the Council had almost forgotten: genuine fear. "Counselor." Veltar Eskil's fluttered rapidly as he processed the reports streaming in from across the wall. Galaxy. The human dreadnought had struck 3 more systems in the past week, each attack more devastating than the last. The Kepler defense grid, thought to be impregnable, had been reduced to scrap metal in under an hour. The Vega orbital platforms, home to nearly 1 billion Council citizens, had simply vanished, leaving behind only empty space and unanswered questions. "The damage assessments are concerning," announced Counselor Mordic, the Malok representative. His stone-like features remained impassive, but there was something in his voice that suggested even living rock could know fear. "The human vessel appears to be using weapons that violate several fundamental laws of physics." "Laws of physics are constants," replied Veltar. "What we're seeing is simply technology we don't yet understand." "No." The voice came from the chamber's shadows, where the hegemony's representative preferred to remain. "What we're seeing is the culmination of a project we should have stopped years ago. The humans called it Project Lazarus, dismissed it as impossible." The chamber fell silent. Even the ever-present hum of the station system seemed too quiet. As the implications sank in, "You knew?" Beltar's voice carried the weight of accusation. "You knew they were developing this? This abomination? We knew they were researching quantum consciousness transfer. We assumed it was theoretical. We were wrong." The holographic display in the center of the chamber flickered to life, showing the tactical readouts from the Battle of Kepler Station. The retribution moved through the defensive formations like a force of nature, its weapons cutting through energy shields and quantum armor as if they were made of paper. "The ship itself is not the weapon," the hegemony representative continued. "The weapon is the consciousness that drives it. Admiral Sarah Chen has merged her mind with the vessel's systems. She doesn't just command the ship, she is the ship." "That's impossible," whispered Counselor Zethra, the Altarian delegate. "No organic mind can interface with technology at that level. The neural pathways would collapse, the consciousness would fragment, unless—" Interrupted Veltar. "The consciousness was preserved and enhanced by artificial means." unless they found a way to maintain human intuition and creativity while adding the processing power of a quantum computer. The implications were staggering. Human mind freed from the limitations of biology, but retaining all the fierce determination and innovative thinking that had made humanity so dangerous. Is merged. With a ship designed to push the boundaries of known physics, we need to evacuate the core worlds, Mordic said heavily. This vessel reaches Nexus Prime, ... It won't, Veltar stated, with more confidence than he felt. We're activating the Omega Protocol. Every available ship, every military asset, every defense grid. We will stop this threat before it can spread. And if we can't... Zethra's voice was barely a whisper. The chamber fell silent once more. They all knew the answer to that question. Meanwhile, light years away, the Retribution drifted through the void between systems. Its hull bore the scars of recent battles, but the damage was already healing as automated repair systems worked. To restore the ship's armor? In the bridge, Sarah Chen stood alone, her form flickering between solid matter and pure energy as the neural interface processed the constant stream of data from the ship's sensors. Atlas, she said quietly, display the current tactical situation. The AI's response came immediately, its voice carrying the weight of calculated analysis. Admiral, we have achieved all primary objectives in the previous engagements. Council. Fleet strength in the targeted sectors has been reduced by 67%. Enemy morale appears to be declining rapidly. Good. What about the secondary objectives? Intelligence gathering has been illuminating. The Council's response patterns suggest they are preparing for a major engagement. I detect significant fleet movements toward the core worlds. Sarah's laugh was cold as the void itself. They're going to make a stand. How very predictable. The main view screen showed the star charts of the local sector. Red markers indicated Council military assets, while blue markers showed the locations of civilian populations. To most observers, it will look like an impossible situation, one ship against the combined might of a galactic civilization. But Sarah no longer thought like most observers. The neural interface had changed her perception. It's allowing her to see patterns and possibilities that would have been invisible to her purely human mind. She could see the weak points in the Council's defenses, the critical nodes that, if destroyed, would cascade into total system failure. Atlas, show me the projected casualty figures for a direct assault on the core worlds. Admiral, such an assault would result in the deaths of approximately 12 billion sentient beings. Majority would be civilian casualties, I know. Sarah's voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. And that's why they think they're safe. They think I won't risk that much death on my conscience. Admiral, if I may ask, ... will you? Sarah turned to face the empty bridge, her form solidifying as she focused on the question. It was a fair question, one that struck at the heart of what she had become. The neural interface had preserved her consciousness, her memories, her personality, but it had also changed her, given her perspectives that no purely human mind could comprehend. Atlas, display the files on the Terran Relocation Initiative. The view screen filled with data, population statistics, transportation logs, facility reports. All clinically documented, all perfectly legal according to Council law. All describing the systematic destruction of human civilization. A billion humans, Sarah said quietly, scattered across the galaxy, stripped of their history, their culture, their identity, turned into a servant class for the Council's perfect order. Children who will never know what it means to be truly human. She walked to the forward view screen, staring out at the stars that had once seemed so full of promise. The Council thinks. In terms of acceptable losses, ATLAs, they weigh the cost of action against the cost of inaction and choose the path that maintains their power. They've convinced themselves that stability is worth any price. And you disagree? I disagree with their math. Sarah's smile was sharp as a blade. They see 12 billion casualties as unacceptable. I see 47 billion casualties as already paid. The only question is whether their sacrifice will mean something. The ship's sensors detected a new energy signature on the edge of the system. Council fleet, massive beyond anything Sarah had yet faced, moving toward their position with grim purpose. Atlas, enemy fleet composition. 1,500 vessels, Admiral. Every class in the Council military. They're throwing everything they have at us. Good. That means this will be the decisive engagement. No more running, no more hiding. Just us against the entirety of their military might. Sarah moved to the command chair, her form becoming more solid as she prepared to fully merge with the ship's systems. The neural interface hummed with power, connecting her consciousness to every weapon. Every sensor, every piece of quantum armor. ATLAS, begin final preparations. Full power to all systems. Charge the reality disruptors. Send a message to the Council fleet. What message, Admiral? Sarah's eyes burned with the fire of 3 centuries of rage. Now tell them that humanity sends its regards. The Retribution began to move, its massive engines propelling it toward the Council fleet with deadly purpose. Behind it, space itself seemed to ripple and bend as if reality was struggling to contain the power of human determination. It's made manifest. The final battle was about to begin, but even as the two forces moved toward their inevitable collision, neither side could have predicted the true cost of what was about to unfold. The Council fleet carried the hopes and fears of a dozen species, the accumulated wisdom of millennia of galactic civilization. The Retribution carried something else entirely, the undying fury of a species that had learned the price of trusting others with their fate. In the void between the stars, those two forces prepared to discover which was stronger, the weight of established order, or the fire of human defiance burning bright against the darkness. The galaxy would never be the same. Chapter 4. The Reckoning. The final battle began not with the thunderous roar of engines, or the brilliant flash of energy weapons, but with silence. In the void between systems, two forces of unimaginable power faced each other across the darkness, each knowing that only one would survive the next hour. Admiral Zekthar stood on the bridge of the Harmony's voice, the Council's most advanced command vessel, surrounded by the greatest military minds the galaxy had ever assembled. 1,500 ships hung in perfect formation around him, their hulls gleaming with the light of distant stars. It was a sight that should have inspired confidence. Instead, all he could think about was the single red dot on his tactical display. All ships report ready, Admiral, announced his tactical officer. The quantum entanglement network is active. Every vessel in the fleet is linked for coordinated fire. Zekthar nodded, but his eyes remained fixed on the enemy. The Retribution hung motionless in space, its dark hull seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. There was something profoundly wrong about the ship, something that made his scales crawl with premonition. "Sir," the communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the target vessel. Put it through." The view screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the human dreadnought. It was empty except for a single figure, Admiral. Sarah Chen, her form flickering between solid matter and pure energy as the neural interface processed impossible amounts of data. "Admiral Zekthar," she said quietly, "you've brought an impressive fleet, 1,500 ships representing every major species in the Council. It's almost flattering. Admiral Chen, this is your final opportunity to surrender. Your ship is powerful, but it cannot stand against the combined might of the galaxy." Sarah's laugh was cold as the void itself. The combined might of the galaxy. "No, Admiral. What you've brought is the combined fear of the galaxy. You're so terrified of what one human can do that you've gathered every ship you can find." "We're not afraid of you," Zekthar replied, but even he could hear the lie in his own words. "Aren't you?" Sarah's smile was sharp as a blade. "Then why haven't you attacked? You have me outnumbered 1,500 to 1. By any logical assessment, you should have opened fire the moment you arrived." The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Zekthar knew she was right. The Council fleet had been in position for nearly an hour, but no one had given the order to attack. They were all waiting, hoping someone else would make the first move. Because, Sarah continued, deep down, you know what's about to happen. You know that most of these ships won't survive the next hour. You know that the crews aboard them, good beings, loyal to the Council, believing in the cause of galactic order, are about to die. And you know it's your fault. How is this our fault? Zekthar's voice carried the weight of genuine confusion. We didn't start this war. We didn't create this weapon. We didn't choose violence over peace. No, Sarah agreed. Yeah. You chose something. Worse, you chose to betray those who trusted you. You chose to break promises made in good faith. You chose to sacrifice an entire species for the sake of your precious stability. The neural interface hummed with power as Sarah's consciousness expanded, merging more fully with the ship's systems. Through the quantum sensors, she could see every vessel in the Council fleet, track every energy signature, predict every possible move. You want to know what I learned during my 3 centuries of sleep? She asked. I learned that there are 2 types of beings in this galaxy. Those who fight for something and those who fight against something. Your fleet is fighting against me, against the threat I represent to your order. But I'm fighting for something much more powerful. And what's that? The right to exist? The right to choose our own path? The right to say no when beings like you decide our fate without asking our permission? Sarah's form began to solidify, her consciousness focusing on the task ahead.
Atlas.
Begin the final sequence. Full power to all systems. The Retribution began to move, its massive engines propelling it toward the Council fleet with deadly purpose. But this time, something was different. The ship's hull began to ripple and to change, sections of armor sliding apart to reveal weapons that defied every known law of physics. All ships, open fire, Zekthar commanded. The Council fleet responded with devastating precision. 1,500 vessels unleashed their full firepower in a coordinated barrage that should have vaporized anything in its path. Particle beams, plasma torpedoes, gravity bombs, and quantum disruptors converged on the Retribution in a display of destruction that lit up the void like a newborn star. When the light faded, the human dreadnought was still there. Impossible, whispered the tactical officer. Nothing could survive that much firepower. It's not just surviving, Zekthar realized with growing horror. It's absorbing the energy. The Retribution had become something beyond a mere ship. Its hull now pulsed with absorbed energy. Weapon systems that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously charging with power that made the stars themselves seem dim by comparison. Atlas, Sarah said quietly. Show them what human ingenuity can accomplish when we stop holding back. The human dreadnought's response was swift and terrible. Weapons that existed at the intersection of science and madness opened fire, beams of twisted space-time that ignored distance and time alike. Where they struck, Council ships didn't just explode. They were erased from existence, their matter scattered across multiple dimensions. But the true horror wasn't the destruction. It was the precision. Each shot was calculated to maximize not just damage, but psychological impact. The Retribution targeted command ships first, then support vessels, leaving the line ships to watch their leadership vanish in bursts of impossible light. Evasive maneuvers, Zekthar shouted. But it was useless. The human ship moved through space like a predator through water, its weapons reaching out across impossible distances to strike with unerring accuracy. The Malak. Battle platform stone eternal, a fortress of living rock that had never been. Breached in 1,000 years of warfare, simply ceased to exist when the reality disruptor struck its core. The shockwave scattered the nearby vessels like toys in a hurricane, sir. The communications officer's voice cracked with panic. We're losing ships faster than the quantum network can compensate. The coordination algorithms are breaking down. Zekthar watched in fascination and terror as his carefully orchestrated battle plan crumbled. The Council fleet had been trained to fight as one mind, sharing information and coordinating attacks through quantum entanglement. But they had never faced an enemy that could think faster than their computers could process. All ships break formation. Individual combat protocols. But even as he gave the order, Zekthar knew it was too late. The Retribution had already analyzed their formation, identified their weaknesses, and begun its systematic destruction of everything they held dear. The human ship moved through the fleet like a scythe through wheat, each pass leaving fewer and fewer vessels in its wake. But it wasn't just the physical destruction that was devastating. It was the message being sent with each kill. Asterisk, this is what happens when you betray humanity. Asterisk, Admiral. The tactical officer said quietly, "We've lost 60% of the fleet. Recommend immediate withdrawal." "No," Zekthar's voice carried the weight of absolute determination. "We hold here. If this ship reaches the core worlds, if it inspires other species to rebellion." He didn't need to finish the sentence. All understood. The Council's power rested on the belief that resistance was futile, that their authority was absolute. If one human ship could devastate their greatest fleet, what would stop every oppressed species in the galaxy from rising up? "To Sir, the communications officer reported, Admiral Chen is hailing us again." Zekthar straightened his uniform and activated the channel. On the view screen, Sarah's form had become more solid, more human, as if the act of destruction had somehow grounded her consciousness. "Admiral," she said quietly, "you're running out of ships. We'll keep fighting until the last vessel is destroyed." "I know you will. That's what makes this so tragic. You're brave beings, fighting for what you believe is right. But you're fighting for a lie. The Council has brought peace to the galaxy. Order. Stability. The Council has brought stagnation," Sarah replied. "You've created a system where the strong prey on the weak, where innovation is discouraged. What are? Our entire species are sacrificed for the sake of maintaining the status quo." On the tactical display, the Retribution was beginning its fourth pass through the fleet. Each attack was more devastating than the last, as if the ship was learning, adapting, becoming more efficient with each kill. "But that's not why you're really here," Sarah continued. "You're here because you're afraid. Afraid that if one species can say no to your authority, others will follow. Afraid that your perfect order is more fragile than you want to admit. Do you want from us? I want you to remember this moment. When you return to the Council, and you will return because I'm going to let some of you live, I want you to tell them exactly what happened here. I want you to tell them that humanity doesn't negotiate with tyrants." The channel closed, leaving Zekthar staring at the tactical display. The numbers were stark, undeniable. Of the 1,500 ships that had entered the battle, fewer than 300 remained. The greatest fleet in galactic history had been reduced to scrap metal by a single human vessel. "Sir," the tactical officer said quietly, "the Retribution is moving toward the core of our formation. If it reaches the command vessels... I know." Zekthar closed his eyes, feeling the weight of command, the responsibility for all the lives about to be lost. "Signal the retreat. All remaining ships fall back to the outer system." "Sir, that's abandoning the mission. The Council will have to accept that some enemies can't be defeated through conventional means." Zekthar's voice carried the weariness of a being who had seen too much death. "Perhaps it's time they learned that lesson." The surviving ships began to withdraw, their engines straining to carry them away from the instrument of their destruction. But the Retribution made no move to pursue, simply hung in space, surrounded by the wreckage of the Council's greatest fleet, a dark monument to the price of betrayal. "Admiral," the communications officer reported, "we're receiving a final transmission from the enemy vessel. Put it through." Sarah's image appeared on the view screen one last time. But now something had changed. The cold fury that had driven her through centuries of planning was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like sadness. "Admiral Zekthar," she said quietly, "when you report back to the Council, tell them this. Humanity is not interested in conquest. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We just want to be left alone. And if the Council refuses..." Sarah's smile was sharp as a blade. "Then I'll come for them next. All of them. Until every being in this galaxy understands that there are consequences for betraying those who trusted you." The transmission ended, leaving Zekthar alone with the weight of his failure. Around him, the bridge crew worked in silence, processing the casualty reports, the damage assessments, the implications of what they had just witnessed. The Retribution began to move again, its massive engines propelling it toward the inner system, toward Earth, toward the heart of Council power. But as Zekthar watched it disappear into the void, he couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had changed. The balance of power that had maintained galactic stability for millennia had been shattered by a single human who refused to accept defeat. The question now was whether the Council would learn from this lesson, or whether they would double down on their mistake and face the consequences of humanity's final answer to the question of extinction. Epilogue. The New Dawn 6. Months after the Battle of the Void, the galaxy had changed in ways both subtle and profound. The councils still existed, still governed from their crystal spires on 1,000 worlds. But their authority had been fundamentally altered by the knowledge that it could be challenged. On Earth, the occupation forces had withdrawn without explanation, leaving behind only empty orbital platforms and confused human populations. The planetary governors had vanished overnight, their alien administrators replaced by hastily appointed human officials who struggled to make sense of the freedom they had never expected to see again. In the deeper reaches of space, the Retribution had become something of a legend. Ships would report strange sightings, a massive vessel appearing at the edge of sensor range, watching, waiting, then disappearing into the void. Some claimed it was protecting human colonies from pirate raids. Others whispered that it was systematically hunting down the architects of humanity's subjugation. The truth, as always, was more complicated, deep within the ship's core. Sarah Chen stood in what had once been the bridge, but was now something else entirely. A nexus where human consciousness met quantum computation, where the boundaries between self and ship had dissolved into something new. "Atlas," she said quietly. "Status report on the human colonies." "Resettlement is proceeding within acceptable parameters," the AI replied. 47 billion displaced persons are being relocated to worlds within the former Sole Defense Zone. The Council has offered no resistance to these movements, and the other species, the ones who were subjugated like us, 17 species, have declared independence from Council authority. The Altarians have established a military alliance with the Reformed Human Federation. The Tausetians have begun developing their own defensive technologies based on captured Council blueprints. Sarah nodded, her form flickering between solid matter and pure energy as she processed the information. The neural interface had given her the ability to think on a galactic scale, to see patterns and connections that spanned light years and centuries. "The Council is fragmenting," she observed. "They're losing control. Is that what you wanted?" It was a fair question, one that struck at the heart of what she had become. The neural interface had preserved her humanity, but it had also changed her, given her perspectives that no purely biological mind could comprehend. "I wanted justice," she said finally. "I wanted the beings who betrayed my species to face consequences for their actions. I wanted them to understand that there are some lines you don't cross. And now—" Sarah turned to face the empty bridge, her consciousness expanding to encompass the entire ship. Through the quantum sensors, she could feel the pulse of human civilization, rebuilding itself, stronger and more determined than ever before. "Now I want something harder," she admitted. "I want peace. Real peace, not the enforced stability the Council called order. I want a galaxy where species can choose their own paths, where the strong don't prey on the weak, where beings like me aren't necessary." The ship shuddered slightly as its massive engines adjusted course. They were heading toward the outer rim, toward the frontier worlds where human colonies struggled to establish themselves in the wake of the Council's withdrawal. Admiral Atlas said carefully, "The modifications to your neural interface are becoming more pronounced. Your consciousness is merging more completely with the ship's systems. At current progression rates, you will cease to exist as a distinct entity within 18 months. Sarah had known this was coming. The neural interface had been designed as a temporary measure, a way to preserve human consciousness long enough to strike back at humanity's enemies. But the technology was imperfect, and the line between human and machine was becoming increasingly blurred. "I know," she said quietly. "But perhaps that's appropriate. The galaxy doesn't need a vengeful ghost haunting its spaceways. It needs guardians who can protect the innocent without becoming monsters themselves. What will you do?" "I'm going to find them," Sarah replied. The next generation of human leaders, the ones who can build something better than what came before, I'm going to teach them everything I've learned, everything I've become, and then, then I'm going to let go. The Retribution continued its journey through the void, its massive hull cutting through space with purpose and determination. But now it carried something new, not just the fury of the wronged, but the hope of those who believe that tomorrow could be better than today. Behind it, the galaxy slowly began to heal from the wounds of the old order. New alliances formed, new technologies developed, new civilizations rose from the ashes of the Council's oppression. And at the center of it all, humanity took its first tentative steps toward becoming not just survivors, but builders of a better future. The age of the Council was ending. The age of true galactic civilization was about to begin, and in the depths of space, Admiral Sarah Chen smiled as she felt her consciousness begin to fade, knowing that her sacrifice had not been in vain. The fire of human determination would burn on, carried by those who would inherit the galaxy she had helped to free. The betrayal had been answered. The war was over. The real work was just beginning.